Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's up, everybody? So, last night we did a live streaming 2-hour marathon of an episode. Hopefully you were able to participate. And to those of you that did participate and were asking questions and engaging, thank you very much for joining me. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast, and I always end up learning a little bit as well as tossing out a bit of information myself. So it's always pleasurable when we get together like that. And it'll be going on every Sunday now. But what I decided is one of the Sundays each month, I'll do the live stream a bit earlier. That way people in different time zones can participate as well. Because I know it's a bit restrictive for people in like, say, England. When I broadcast at 7, it's like 3 a.m. for them. So once a month, I will do a live stream on a Sunday in the afternoon. 1, 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, something like that. That way, those of you who are in that time zone and you want to participate, you're not stuck staying up all night or waking up at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning to jump on the live stream. So that's what we have planned going forward for the live streams and for Sundays in general. And I couldn't be more pleased. Last night was, like I said, a bunch of fun. I really enjoyed doing it in that sort of format and having just basically just like a Q&A session. It's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of chat inside of the comments, a lot of people sharing ideas, throwing things around. So it's certainly something that I think you would find beneficial and enjoyable if you follow the podcast on a regular basis and enjoy what we do here. So hopefully next Sunday, if you haven't been able to check it out, you'll be able to pop in and see if it's something you enjoy. Because I think that the engagement with the other listeners and other people who are interested in the case, it goes a long way, right? So, thankfully, we have the ability to get together like that due to technology, and we're going to continue to do so. All right, folks, so, we've been hammering the financial aspect here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. And during the live stream last night, I was talking about an article I was going to share this morning that goes a little bit into how Jeffrey Epstein was turning and burning IPOs and how that was a huge, huge source of wealth for him. Now, we know he's not some financial guru. We've established that. We know that he is not some sort of Oracle of Omaha. And we know that this guy isn't really out there on Wall Street with this huge name where people think, oh, yeah, that's Jeffrey Epstein. This dude's a stock whiz. That wasn't the case. And they tried to pump it to us like it was, right? The narrative was he's this wealthy financier. And the proof really isn't in the pudding, to tell you the truth. It looks like Jeffrey Epstein, the way he was getting a lot of his money was via these underwritten IPOs that are basically guaranteed by the banks. So they'd, toss him these hot IPOs, and Jeffrey Epstein and his shell companies, like we talked about, would turn and burn them for a good profit, basically a guaranteed profit. And in the world of finance, the word guaranteed very rarely comes along. So when you have the ability to have underwritten stock options thrown your way by these institutions, you automatically have a leg up. Never mind the financial privilege that you have, but now, on top of it, you're getting all of the goodies, all of the extras, even after they knew what Jeffrey Epstein was. And that's the rub here, right? I'm not talking about prior to his arrest. They'd at least be able to defend themselves then. We didn't know. Even if we don't believe that statement, they'd at least have a defensible position. But this was going on after his arrest. This was going on after everybody knew what sort of slimy scumbag this dude was. But they didn't care. They were still offering him them IPOs. They were still offering him the hot stocks for him to make a quick profit off of. And all because he was steering business back their way. It is an absolutely parasite type of relationship, the way they feed off of each other. And I really hope with the new anti-money laundering regulations that were stuffed in the bill that was just passed, the NDAA, that we start to see some teeth when it comes to money laundering and these people who are involved in this sort of thing. Let's hope that some repercussions are coming down the pipe and that we won't just get these ridiculous rulings where the companies have to pay some money. Like, they don't... Look, I get it. It's a lot of money, right? $150 million. Nothing to sneeze at for us, but for the bank, it's pennies on the dollar. And they're not paying it anyway. The stockholders are. You are. You're paying that 26% finance fee, right? On your Hyundai. You're paying it, folks. So, these people... They really thought that their relationships with Epstein weren't going to be put on blast, and they thought they were going to skate by for all of these years and all of this time the way they always have. But they had no idea what was in store for them in 2020, and they certainly have no idea what's coming down the pipe in 2021, because the foot is just now pressing down on the accelerator, right? We haven't even, what are we in third gear now or so? We haven't even really seen the freeway speeds that are coming in this case. And there's going to be a lot of them. There's going to be a lot of craziness going on in this case. A lot of people being dragged into it that are going to have to answer questions that have tried to avoid it for a long time. And hopefully we'll see the legacy media do their job and start pursuing some of these leads the way that these leads should be pursued. Because as of now, we know that's not the case. We know that all the way up until 2015, even, Amy Robach and her goons were killing stories at ABC, and even after. You know, we had the leaked tape. We heard what went on. We know that they squashed it because of access to the royals. And we even have Robach on wax saying that she doesn't believe Epstein killed himself either. But none of that ever was going to see the air. None of that was ever going to be put out into the public sphere. Because at the end of the day, the legacy media doesn't respect you. They don't care about you. They think you're stupid as hell. And they think that no matter what sort of nonsense they pump, that you're going to buy it hook, line, and sinker. And for a long time, we all did, right? We turned on the news and we figured, all right, this shit's on ABC, this shit's on CBS and NBC, and all right, this has to be the truth. But we know that's not the case. We know now for sure that the legacy media is playing their own game. And the best interest of the public most certainly isn't their end goal. And we've seen that on steroids in the Jeffrey Epstein case, time and time again. So when they don't dig into the finances, when they don't talk about things like this like they should be, well, it makes you wonder why. And I would think that the IPOs, the stock market moves Epstein was making, and the institutions that were underwriting these IPOs that Epstein was afforded, I think that would be a bigger part of the story. It's a huge deal. This is, in my opinion, one of the huge ways Jeffrey Epstein was bringing in money. And it is something that I think, as the story moves forward, is going to come to the forefront if the financial portion of this is truly investigated and prosecuted in the manner that it should be. because everything is there for them right here, folks. It all just comes down to willpower at this point. How much further are they willing to go besides Maxwell, Brunel, the core four? How much further are they willing to go to really put their boot to the neck of all of these people that were involved financially as well? They have the basis here. They have the circumstantial evidence. They have the probable cause. The question is, do they have the willpower? And I guess the answer to that is undetermined. I guess we'll have to see. But today's article is from Wall Street on Parade. It's, if you're not familiar with it, it's a kind of like a guide to Wall Street for citizens, like a layman's blog sort of, where they cover a bunch of different things that are going on Wall Street, a bunch of the crooks on Wall Street, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're not familiar with Wall Street on Parade and you're interested in this financial chase that we're on here, it's certainly a cool website to check out and put into your rotation. So this article was authored by Pam Martins and Russ Martins, July 15th of 2019. Headline: Tax filing suggests child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein made his wealth flipping hot IPOs on Wall Street. And now this plays right into our article that we read recently from Barron's that was talking about the same thing. The IPOs that were afforded by Morgan Stanley and other institutions, where Jeffrey Epstein was given these IPOs, the rights to them, and able to grab them up from the bank. And then he was able to flip them right away and make a guaranteed profit with basically no chance at a risk of loss. And this was something that he was doing a lot, prevalently. And it's something that definitely needs to be brought to light and spoken on a bit more. Jeffrey Epstein is variously called a billionaire, a hedge fund manager, or a financier in the hundreds of articles that have appeared in print this month. Pedophile is the correct term, by the way. But no one can say with any certainty how Epstein obtained his wealth or exactly how much wealth he actually has. We've located a highly interesting ledger from one of his nonprofit tax filings, which shows he was able to get his hands on highly preferential hot IPOs, initial public offerings, and flip them on their first day of trading. We'll explore that in detail shortly, but first, some background. And this is just more context on that article from Barron's. This is about the same situation, right? Like I said last night on the live stream, I wanted to talk about it a little bit more and add a little more context. And with the news being slow, this is the perfect time to do it. And when these IPOs come out, it's a big deal, right? For instance, when I was promoted to a management position with Cantor Fitzgerald, they were talking about taking our company public, Cantor Gaming. So part of my package to sign on into a management position was shares of the IPO if it ever went public. And I was given X amount of shares as part of my package. And if the company ever went public like it was supposed to, well, I would have been in the money. With however many shares I had, what they were worth, blah, 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 blah. But what happens with people like Epstein, it's that, but on steroids, right? These people they're handpicked who's afforded these benefits. These people are handpicked who's going to get these tips and the access to these IPOs. And Jeffrey Epstein should not have had access to these things after his arrest. Before his arrest, again, it's debatable, right? We know there's scumbags in the finance world, but until it's proven, until you have tangible evidence, you can't really, go too crazy about something. But with Epstein, we're talking about a guy who had already been convicted, and he was still being afforded these privileges. Jeffrey Epstein is due in federal court in Manhattan this morning to argue his case for being allowed to serve his time until trial under house arrest in his opulent $77 million mansion on the Upper East Side, rather than the drab confinements of jail. Now remember, this article is from 2019, a bit older, but sometimes you have to dig back into the time machine to get the articles that are going to discuss the topics that are hot at hand. Because, once again, the legacy media hasn't dug any deeper. You know, they talk about this stuff, one or two articles, and then that's it, nothing. No deeper dive, no context, and certainly no explanations about what any of it means. Epstein was arrested by federal prosecutors on Saturday, July 6th, and charged with sex trafficking of minors and sexually abusing dozens of underage girls at his mansions in Palm Beach, Manhattan, and potentially at other mansions he owns. Well, we know for a fact now that that's certainly the case. We know that the Virgin Islands, for sure, down at his island there, was a hotspot for him to abuse people and traffic girls, and certainly Zorro Ranch. I'm not going to go off on my usual tangent about Zorro Ranch right now, but you all know where I stand on that place. There are a multitude of strong arguments against releasing this man from jail. Ostensibly, Epstein should have begun serving a life sentence a decade ago after Palm Beach, Florida police compiled sexual assault and trafficking evidence from more than 40 young women and gave it to the FBI. And therein lies the crux of the whole entire problem. You see, a lot of people will want to point at, the figureheads who have taken the forefront of this case, right? Like people like Virginia and Annie and Courtney, all of the girls who have come forward and have spoken up publicly. They're the de facto face of this. But we have to remember that there are other unnamed girls that have never come forward or who have never had their chance to, speak on it in public because they're still scared or they're still suffering whatever sort of issues that they might be suffering due to the abuse. So I know when I talk about Virginia or Annie or, any of the girls, I mean every one of them. Every one of them, especially the ones who are unnamed, who have not come forward to tell their story, and how many more are there that we don't even know about? I mean, according to accounts by some of the survivors, we're talking into the thousands, folks, of girls that were possibly abused by Jeffrey Epstein and company. So it's pretty wild to think how many girls were involved in this. And I'm talking about in Palm Beach alone even. These little high school girls. And that's why I think that the NPA, the non-prosecution agreement down there, I think it's one of the many reasons, but one of the key reasons is the whole entire thing has to be blown up. And what happened in that grand jury has to be known, and everybody who took part in making sure that Jeffrey Epstein was able to skirt out on this has to take responsibility for their part, and whatever sanctions or criminal penalties are coming their way, well, they need to start coming, because what happened in Florida is a travesty. We're talking about high school girls here, folks. 100%, not even a question, no debate, little girls from Palm Beach High School. A sweetheart deal was instead crafted in that case during a meeting by his lawyer and federal prosecutor, Alex Acosta, which resulted in Epstein serving only 13 months in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Jail. Adding insult to injury, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department allowed Epstein to leave the jail from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. in a work release program 6 days a week during the final 10 months of his incarceration. So we all know how bad this is. We all know how gross this is, and we all know that none of us would ever be afforded the same rights. The fact that he was able to get out of this jail cell, even in the middle of the sweetheart deal he already had, is just another step too far. And it's just brazen at this point, how they're basically throwing it in the face of the survivors and the public, that no matter what Jeffrey Epstein or somebody in his class of people do, there's not going to be any repercussions for them. So why should anybody in the future who would think about doing the same thing have second thoughts if Epstein isn't punished harshly, if Maxwell isn't punished harshly? That's why it's very important to make sure that whatever the law dictates in regards to Maxwell going forward as far as her crimes, that she is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Acosta advanced to Secretary of the U.S. Labor Department, wait for it, the federal agency in charge of sex trafficking. Acosta resigned on Friday after widespread media reports of his involvement in the Epstein case. And it was a bad look from the very beginning. Acosta being the head of the department, it is just, I never understood why Trump would have all of these sort of people around him. It's just gross. It's bad leadership. It's just terrible all around. And then you add Dershowitz to the mix and Steve Mnuchin. I mean, how many fellow travelers? Another strong reason to keep Epstein in jail is under his plea deal in Florida, he is registered as a level 3 sex offender in New York, and his mansion is located just blocks from the Hewitt K-12 all-girls school. Yep, there you go. That was plenty there for me. This dude, as a sex offender, should not be around any sort of school. In fact, he should have been buried underneath the prison like I always talk about, but since he wasn't, the least you could do is make sure that he's not around the school. Not like it would stop him, but at the very least, can we follow the rules that everybody else has to follow, please? When authorities raided his Manhattan mansion in conjunction with his recent arrest, they found hundreds of pictures of naked young girls in a safe in his house, according to a statement from prosecutors. And I think that we'll see those pictures, not us the public, but during trial. Those pictures will probably be used to help them get their prosecution against Ghislaine Maxwell and others who were involved. And finally, prosecutors argued in a filing with the court on Friday that Epstein is paid $250,000 and $100,000 respectively to two potential co-conspirators as recently as the past year, ostensibly to buy their silence. Epstein had multiple persons procuring underage women for him to abuse, including employees and others, according to multiple lawsuits against him. And last night in the live stream, we talked a little bit about this, about the bribe money, the hush money, the payoff money, and the silly-ass salaries that the Core 4 were drawing to be assistants. None of it made sense, and it's obvious that the money that was paid out to the two co-conspirators during this whole entire time, one of them Vickers, and the other one, Leslie Groff, I believe, is just absurd for anyone to think, what is this, a bonus? Oh yeah, well, I'm about to go to prison and I'm in, my finances are under investigation and this, that, and the other thing, but here's a few $100,000 for you guys to just, roll around, and it doesn't make sense. Not with Epstein. Remember who we're dealing with. This guy, you weren't going to divorce him from his money. Very cheap man. Very cheap man. The public's right to know how Epstein made his money is essential to understanding just how much he has gotten away with under the nose of the FBI and the U.S. Department of Just Us, and a full listing of just whom his co-conspirators are. Powerful men flew on his private planes, one of which was called the Lolita Express, and stayed at his private mansions. Were they paying him to secure young women for them or getting him access to hot IPOs? The Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie K. Brown, who may have forced New York prosecutors into revisiting the case against Epstein through her in-depth series of articles in November of last year, stated this recently on television. So it's definitely possible, right? These guys that were hooking them up with the IPOs, were they in on getting girls procured for them? Possibly. These unnamed girls from Eastern Europe, these girls without a voice, who knows what they were subjected to while they were here. And while we have no reports from the survivors per se about, a guy like Jess Staley or Leon Black or any of these other people, at the end of the day, who the hell knows what really occurred? And that's why the investigation's so important, and that's why these people who have been subpoenaed or who might be involved, it's important that they come forward and speak to the authorities if they want to clear their name. If not, then they're just opening up the door for people to come to their own conclusions according to the evidence that's available. We don't know how deep this went, how far-reaching it went in government. But there have been a lot of names that I could see on these message pads listing clients on a regular basis as part of the evidence. These message pads were where they would call and leave Epstein messages such as, "I'm at this hotel. Why do you do that unless you're expecting him to send you a girl to visit you at your hotel?" So there are probably quite a few important people, powerful people, who are sweating it out right now. We'll have to wait and see whether Epstein is going to name names. And it's kind of chilling to look back at that, right? That's what everybody was waiting for. Everybody was on the edge of their seat, waiting for Epstein to name some names. But before that could happen, Jeffrey Epstein died in the custody of the federal government. And if you're a trusting person and you believe what Darth Barr has to say, well, it was just a simple case of suicide, folks. Meanwhile, you got Julie K. Brown here, even Julie K. Brown, mainstream media herself, talking about how far this could reach in the government and the names on the message pads and how people are sweating it out. I'm certainly not a genius or anything, but 2 + 2 = 4 to me. Or Epstein may have been like Bernie Madoff, making money through numerous illegal activities, including a Ponzi scheme. See, J.P. Morgan and Madoff were facilitating nesting doll-style frauds within frauds. It's a hyperlink within this article, and you can definitely click on it if you're if you're interested in finding out more about that. You can definitely click there and do that. According to an affidavit filed in court by Epstein's former business partner, Stephen Hoffenberg of Towers Financial, Epstein's early wealth derives from a Ponzi scheme that put Hoffenberg behind bars for 20 years. And I'm not going to rehash that. Everyone's pretty familiar with Steve Hoffenberg's story and his situation with Epstein. And it's not even a question for me how Epstein was getting his money. We know it was due to illegal activity. And I would guess, I don't have evidence of this, but I would guess that he was afforded protection from the FBI and the CIA or whoever if he would help them by ratting on other people in this industry. And if you think he's above ratting on people, you're mistaken. He was an information broker, right? And he would sell that information or trade it at a moment's notice. If Epstein was a hedge fund manager, it was a big secret to other well-known hedge fund managers on Wall Street. Doug Cass, who has his ear very close to this street and has managed money on Wall Street for decades, told New York Magazine last week, "I went to my institutional brokers, to their trading desks, and I asked if they ever traded with him. I did it a few times until the date when he was arrested. Not one institutional trading desk, primary or secondary, had ever traded with Epstein's firm." And that is damning. Very damning, folks. I've heard this from a lot of insiders within Wall Street, a lot of people who work in the sector, and a lot of people who laugh out loud when people try and posit Epstein as this great financier, this Wall Street guru genius. because it just doesn't fit with the real facts on the ground. But there is some anecdotal evidence that Epstein may have been trading. In the 2016 nonfiction book, Filthy Rich, A Powerful Billionaire, The Sex Scandal That Undid Him, and All the Justice That Money Can Buy, The Shocking True Story of Jeffrey Epstein, by James Patterson, John Connolly, and contributor Tim Malloy, there is a reference to one of the planes when then owned by Epstein, a Boeing 727, that the writers say was customized with its own trading floor. Yeah, he was doing trading, there's no doubt. He definitely was playing the market and, dipping his toes. But he was no guru, right? He wasn't some super intelligent financier whiz that was so smart that Leon Black and Les Wexner had to seek out his help, or one of the Johnsons. Stop it, all right? Just stop it with that nonsense. No one's buying that. So we did some digging into one of the few financial documents involving Epstein that are not under seal. A federal 990 tax filing for his nonprofit called, wait for it, Gratitude America. The last page of that document lists dozens of publicly traded stocks that were held in the portfolio, the majority of which were bought and sold on the same day. In the lingo of Wall Street, that's called day trading, and it is virtually unheard of in an investment portfolio for a taxpayer-subsidized nonprofit charity. So what they're basically saying here is that this is obviously bupkis, this is obviously BS, and that it is virtually unheard of for something like this to be part of the portfolio of a nonprofit. So what was Epstein really doing with Gratitude America? There are some modest losses among the day-traded stocks, but there are also some eye-popping gains on IPO offerings that spiked on their first day of trading. The average American can't get their hands on 100 shares of a hot IPO stock, let alone in the quantities that Epstein's ledger suggests he secured. No shit. We're not playing the game. We're not part of the game. That two-tier justice system is also the two-tiered system of life that these people live on. And I said it earlier and I'll say it again. Nobody's calling you from the bank offering you a hot IPO. That shit ain't happening, okay? But if you're Jeffrey Epstein, the child abuser, the child molester, the sex trafficker, the human trafficker, the money launderer, the general all-around scuzzbag and companion to the bipedal serpent, it is game on, folks. For example, on October 18th, 2017, the gain-loss ledger shows that someone representing the charity bought and sold 2.5 million lots for a total of 5 million shares of a Chinese company called Quidian Incorporated, which trades as an ADR, American Depository Receipt, on the New York Stock Exchange. Quidian went public at $24 a share on the exact same date that Epstein shows that he both bought and sold the stock, flipping a hot IPO as it is known in the trade. Epstein's charity made a gain of $35,689 on the two lots. But the dollar amounts listed as to what he paid and what he sold the shares for indicate that the charity held just two lots of 2,500 each, or a total of 5,000 shares. Not the 5 million shares listed under the quantity column of the ledger. So they were cooking the books, bullshitting around, quite obvious what was going on. And what, you think it was just Epstein doing this? I bet you dollars to donuts that Mr. Indike was involved. I don't have the evidence to prove that, but my guess would be that the in-house lawyer would be very much involved in something like this. All other dollar amounts for other stock trades indicate the same thing, that 3 extra zeros have been added under the quantity column. We don't know if this is an error in the quantity column, or if Epstein was able to actually secure vast amounts of hot IPOs and simply allocated a portion of the profits to his charity. We can say this: Getting any sizable quantity of a hot IPO means you have some powerful friends somewhere with powerful connections to Wall Street. Yeah, that is definitely the case. That's why we're doing this article today. That's why we're talking about this again. I want to drive home the point that these IPOs are not something that's offered to everybody. It's not me and you who are getting this, not your Uncle Joe, not even your rich friend John. Nobody's getting this unless you're locked in and you're friends, I mean really friends, with the movers and the shakers on Wall Street. A sampling of other hot IPOs shown on his charity's gain-loss ledger include Roku, the streaming video company that went public on September 28, 2017. Epstein acquired it at its initial listing price of $14 a share and flipped it the next day at approximately $26.33 a share. It's not clear if trading commissions have been subtracted from the sales proceeds. That's an 88% gain for less than a 24-hour holding period. Now, I know that's a lot for people who aren't really into the stock market, that don't really understand day trading and stuff like that. But if you're getting an 88% return on your trades, you are killing it, and you're setting yourself up to have a lot of money in the long run. But this guy, Jeffrey Epstein, and the way he was getting these IPOs, it's not because he's some great financier. There was some sort of quid pro quo going on here. I do for you, you do for me, and we all get rich and laugh at everybody else. That's what's going on here, in my opinion. Another IPO obtained was the email marketing company SendGrid, which he flipped on the first day of trading in November 15th of 2017 for a gain of 13.8% in one day. So again, these are huge gains. Not the 88%, but if you can get 13% on your investment and you're investing big money, folks, that's a big clip. And you're going to be very profitable if you're reaping those kind of rewards. The charity's gain-loss ledger shows that, in dollar terms, his largest profit came from a position in Tencent Holdings, the Chinese internet company. He bought his position on two dates in 2016 and sold both lots on August 14th, 2017 for a gain of $693,412 in a little over a year's time. We'll be reaching out to the accounting firm that filed his tax return to inquire why the quantity column for the shares of stock shows 3 extra zeros versus the dollar amounts realized in the purchase and sales columns. So this gives you just a little bit more of a look, folks, at how Epstein was conducting himself, at how he was conducting, at the very least, a portion of his business. And he was getting these IPOs. They were hot. They were guaranteed. They were underwritten by the institutions, and he was burning them for huge profits at 88% a clip. Or in just over a year, a $693,000 plus some change profit. Not a bad year's work if you can get it, huh? Not a bad year's work with your passive money making money for you. The only problem is they were doing this business with a convicted sex offender and one of the scummiest people in the country, maybe in the whole world, in fact. And now that the doors are blown off of all of this, Jeffrey Epstein's gone and dead, but these institutions still remain. And folks, it's about time they start answering some questions. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back later on tonight, and we will pick up where we left off. Have a great day, everyone.